Hello! So today we're going to be talking about shards, and more specifically, how shards affect people. Now, the reason I say this is because everyone's just like a lot of people have talked about shards influencing people and driving them towards conflict, and how that's a shard thing. And I feel like there is a potentially dangerous avenue of thought that continues past that point, which is not very informative, not very useful, and is not very good for your writing. So, I'm definitely not the first to talk about this, but I just wanted to get it out there anyway. So, first of all, yes, shards have some influence. They do drive their users to conflict. But how much of that is actually the shards doing, and how much of that is just taking advantage of human psychology, I can't tell you, because they mainly exaggerate people's flaws. It's like if you give someone a hammer, that old saying, if all you've got is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. In other words, you try to use the same thing to solve the same problem. And there's also the fact that you shouldn't forget that often, especially when it comes to natural capes, your powers come to you after the most traumatizing, life-shattering moment you'll ever experience, your trigger event. It doesn't really go to anyone who's that stable, which is why cauldron capes have a much more higher percentage of people that are, that are gonna be heroes solely because they don't have to deal with that trauma first. And then there's the fact that by doing it, you're rewarding them for you're giving them a way out of it, and that can be a very dangerous thing in a lot of people's hands. Like, if you just look at our world, you'll see that there's a lot of cases of people abusing petty powers in the most ridiculous ways possible. Now, imagine if that petty power was flying, or being invincible, or being able to shoot laser beams from your belly button or something, I don't know. Like, stuff like that. It's not it's not good for the balance of power, especially because it does go to people who have just gone through something horrible, and they're not going to make the most rational decisions. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, shards will influence people, but most of that will be people just taking advantage of a new tool they have, rather than the shards overriding their personality, because Sophia was got to be aggressive beforehand. Just getting that power doesn't turn her into super asshole. Arms Master was probably pretty socially awkward before he got his as well, and just doing that just pushed him down the track of Tinker, which completely exacerbated the problem. Now, that's the thing. Powers have a tendency to not actually shard. That's another thing. Shards have a tendency not to help your problem, because most of the time it's to solve something. You trigger in response to something happening and you want to solve it. So tinkers usually come out from long-term stress and not knowing how to do things. All of them come from a sense of isolation and powerlessness. Masters are, influencing people. Strangers are being forgotten and being remembered. Brutes more physical stuff. Like it. Although you don't want to go to the point where it's literally like the iron face problem, which is, you get hit in the face, your face is now like invincible specifically. But there's that kind of response. But oftentimes, because of the way they're designed, this isn't quite shards influencing, but just the design of the powers that gets given out. They themselves don't help too much. Like, Arms Master's socially awkward, lots of stress. He can't fix it with that. He just has less time to spend with people. He has a much more stressful goal under his belt now because of his personality. Clock Blocker goes from having his dad about to die from cancer and feeling completely powerless and not knowing how to deal with that, to being able to free something for 10 minutes, and that's not the most relevant and applicable power in that kind of scenario. Taylor, is alone, isolated, and wants to understand people and gets the creepy bug power. So they're designed to not. It's like a monkey's paw. It's not going to give you what you want, and that is the point that actually makes it the worst, because that's what lets them create more conflict, because of the fact that they're trying to use a hammer on a screw. It's not the right tool for the job, but when all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And that is how shards work, in my opinion. I'll see you guys next week.